Ready?
Mm-hmm.
The death of George Washington in 1799 elicited a memorable tribute from Henry Lee. Lee, the father of Confederate military leader Robert E. Lee, was himself a Virginia officer whose Revolutionary War exploits and quick movements lent him the nickname Light Horse Harry. Henry Lee's funeral oration for Washington includes lists of reverential modifiers: pious, just, humane, and archaic language. Methinks I see his august image. The dramatic device of attributing a speech to the deceased will appear again in Daniel Webster's eulogy for John Adams. Lee's tribute is remembered, however, almost exclusively for the elegant opening line, "First in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen," that has a horse's hoofbeats rhythm and encapsulates in 3 short phrases the record and reputation of the first president of the United States. First in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen, he was second to none in the humble and enduring scenes of private life, pious, just, humane, temperate, and sincere, uniform, dignified, and commanding. His example was as edifying to all around him as were the effects of that example lasting. To his equals he was condescending, to his inferiors kind, and to the dear object of his affections exemplarily tender, correct throughout. Vice shuddered in his presence, and virtue always felt his fostering hand. The purity of his private character gave effulgence to his public virtues. His last scene comported with the whole tenor of his life. Although in extreme pain, not a sigh, not a groan escaped him, and with undisturbed serenity he closed his well-spent life. Such was the man America has lost. Such was the man for whom our nation mourns. Methinks I see his august image, and I hear falling from his venerable lips these deep-sinking words: "Cease, sons of America, lamenting our separation. Go on and confirm by your wisdom the fruits of our joint counsels, joint efforts, and common dangers. Reverence religion, diffuse knowledge throughout your land, patronize the arts and sciences. Let liberty and order be inseparable companions. Control party spirit, the bane of free governments. Observe good faith to and cultivate peace with all nations. Shut up every avenue to foreign influence. Contract rather than extend national connection. Rely on ourselves only. Be Americans in thought, word, and deed. This will give you immortality to that union which was the constant object of my terrestrial labors. Thus will you present undisturbed to the latest posterity the felicity of a people to me most dear, and this will you supply, if my happiness is now aught to you, the only vacancy in the round of pure bliss high heaven bestows." On July 4th, 1826, the 50th anniversary of the adoption of the Declaration of Independence, John Adams died. His last words, "Thomas Jefferson still survives." But Jefferson did not survive. By coincidence, he also died that same day. His last words were, "This is the 4th? Maybe it's a good idea that we have stopped recording last words." At a double memorial service for these framers, the great orator of the day, Representative Daniel Webster, spoke in Boston's Faneuil Hall. In the style of the ancient historians, he included in his address a speech that might have been given by John Adams. In his grandiloquent but moving manner, Webster set the scene with a supposed speech by John Hancock, dissenting from the Declaration as unseasonable and ill-judged, warning of the day when we ourselves, given up by an exhausted, a misled people, shall have expiated our rashness and atoned for our presumptions on the scaffold. Said Webster, "It was for Mr. Adams to reply to arguments like these. We know his opinions, we know his character. He would commence with his accustomed directness and earnestness." Then Webster delivered the speech within a speech. It is sometimes mistakenly taken to be Adams's own words, but Adams would have writhed listening to it because Adams' style was much more brisk and businesslike. May none but honest and wise men ever rule under this roof. Here was the retrospective ghostwriting for one of America's founders. Sink or swim, live or die, survive or perish. I give my hand and my heart to this vote. It is true, indeed, that in the beginning we aimed not at independence, but there's a divinity which shapes our ends. That's it.
Not good.
140.
How do you write divinity?
One stroke.
One stroke.
Because I write divine one stroke. See that div, DW, it's a good, it's actually divine, diverse, couple of others. Ready?
Guess right. Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Doctor, are you a cardiologist? Yes, I am. And what is your specialty? It is interventricular septal defects. And that is an open cardiotomy that you would perform? Yes, as well as a repair of the interventricular defect under direct vision. And what is the procedure? The procedure is the incision into the right ventricle and exposure of the defect, a repair with suture or ventricular patch, and an extracorporeal circulation with or without hypothermia. Doctor, the heart, ventricles, and pulmonary artery are part of the tetralogy of Fallot? That is correct. The diagnosis is the tetralogy of Fallot, which is the ventricular defect, the pulmonic stenosis, the dextro position of the aorta, and the hypertrophy of the right ventricle. What is the operation called for, doctor? It is a shunting operation known as Blaylock's method or Potts-Smith's method. And is that a joining of the right or left subclavian? Yes, it is, a joining to the pulmonary artery. And what is Brock's operation? That is a total correction of the tetralogy of Fallot. It is an open heart operation. An open heart surgery? Correct. And a removal of the pulmonic obstruction? Well, the defect's totally repaired using suture closure or patch for the closure. It is an infundibulum resected to correct the pulmonary stenosis. Cardiopulmonary bypass with or without hypothermia is called for. Doctor, the heart and atria and ventricles are all atherosclerotic? That is correct. The heart disease means the insertion of transvenous endothelial and endocardial pacemakers. The catheter electrode is passed through an incision in the jugular vein and lodged in the apex of the right ventricle. Is there a subcutaneous tunnel and pocket constructed? That is right, as well as a catheter electrode fastened to the pacemaker. The pacemaker is inserted into a pocket in the cardiac area. And the heart and left ventricle are what? They are the ventricular aneurysm, which is a left heart failure. The ventricular aneurysmectomy is an open heart surgery. What about the transverse sternotomy with bilateral thoracotomy? Well, that is a heart that is opened. And the removal of the aneurysm is the purpose? Well, the removal of the aneurysm as well as its sac and related thrombus, a reconstruction of the left ventricle and closure of the heart, an extracorporeal circulation with or without hypothermia. And the heart and right atrium are part of the myxoma of the right atrium? Yes, as well as with progressive right heart failure. The atriotomy with excision of the primary cardiac tumor means open heart surgery. And the right atrium is opened, is it? Yes, the right atrium is opened and myxoma removed. The use of cardiopulmonary bypass with or without hypothermia is called for. That is the operation, yes. What is constrictive pericarditis, doctor? Well, it is adherent pericardium, the pericardiectomy or pericardialysis is a partial removal of the pericardium and a breaking up of the adhesions. What is obstructive coronary artery disease with myocardial ischemia? Well, that could also be with angina pectoris. And that is a myocardium effect? Well, the direct revascularization is an aortocoronary artery bypass with autogenous grafts of saphenous veins, which is essentially also open heart surgery. Doctor, the surgical creation of the new ostium in ascending aorta and new openings into the vessels of the aortic arch for implanting the proximal ends of the vein grafts means what? It means anastomoses of the distal ends of the grafts with coronary arteries to bypass occlusive lesions, the extracorporeal circulation with or without hypothermia. And, counsel, you are revealing that you are also a doctor.